Everyone laughed at her until one customer saw the tattoo on her arm and whispered, "No way, that's military." What happened next left the entire restaurant speechless. Her name was Ellie, 27, a waitress at Stone and Iron, a high-end restaurant where polished floors met cold hearts. She worked the hardest shifts, took the worst tables, and never once complained. She moved fast, quiet, invisible, unless someone wanted to laugh. The scars on her body were obvious. Burn patterns up her left arm, across her collarbone, and a faint trail that curved behind her ear. Some guessed she was in a fire. Others said it was self-inflicted. No one ever asked. They just assumed. Tonight, a group of businessmen on a corporate dinner outing had taken notice. Too much wine, too many fake laughs. One man sneered, "How does someone that messed up end up serving here?" Another said, "Maybe the kitchen caught fire and she crawled out with the steak." Laughter. Ellie didn't flinch. Not anymore. She had taught herself not to. But in the back of the restaurant, seated alone, was an older man with a worn army cap and a single silver star pinned to his collar. He watched her closely, not with pity, not with disgust, but with the narrowed, haunted eyes of someone who had seen things. As Ellie poured water for a table nearby, her sleeve slipped. That was when he saw it, on the inside of her wrist. A tattoo, a small black insignia, a dagger through a flame. His heart slammed into his ribs. That symbol was only worn by a classified Army medical evacuation unit. The same one that he had nearly died in, the same one that had lost several members in an attack overseas 12 years ago. He leaned forward, gripping his cane. "Ma'am?" he said hoarsely. Ellie turned, startled. "Yes, sir?" He pointed to her wrist. "Where did you get that?" She froze. Her eyes darted to the tattoo. It was my father's. I got it after he passed." The man slowly stood and the restaurant went dead quiet because he wasn't just any veteran. He was Colonel Thomas Ryland, Silver Star recipient, presumed dead for 2 months in Kandahar before being found half buried under rubble by a combat medic who saved his life. And he knew that symbol because it wasn't official, but because only one person had drawn it, by hand, freestyle, a young, female medic with shaking hands and a calming voice. He stared at Ellie's face again. "Wait, you are not his daughter." He stepped forward slowly, voice low and full of awe. "You were there. You are her." The crowd looked between them, confused. Ellie swallowed, her mask cracking. The room was about to learn something none of them were prepared to hear, because this waitress they had mocked had once been a ghost on a battlefield, and now one of the men she saved had finally found her. The restaurant had never been this quiet. The servers froze. The business group fell silent. Even the kitchen doors stopped swinging. Everyone turned toward Colonel Thomas Ryland as he stared at Ellie. Not with judgment, not even with disbelief, but with recognition. "You are her," he said again, voice trembling. "You pulled me out of that rubble. I remember your hands, your voice. You kept me breathing." Ellie looked around, eyes everywhere. The people who had just laughed at her scars now stared like they were seeing a ghost. She could have denied it, could have backed away, but something in Colonel Ryland's eyes, trust, unlocked a door she had bolted shut years ago. "I was there," she said softly. "Forward operating base, Sapphire. I was a field medic. They called me Torch because of the burns from the fuel blast." Gasps echoed. One of the men who had mocked her stood, his face pale. "You were in the military?" "I was a combat medic. At 19. Colonel Ryland stepped closer, his voice cracking. "You were more than that. You were a hero. You crawled in the fire when everyone else backed away. You dragged me out with 2 broken ribs, and you disappeared. We thought you died in the second strike." Ellie shook her head. "I survived. Barely. I spent 9 months in military hospitals, but I could not go back. Not after what happened. I got discharged, quietly. No ceremony, no closure." She looked down at her arms. "These scars, they told everyone a different story. So I stopped telling mine." The man who had joked about her melting earlier looked like he might sink through the floor. Colonel Ryland turned toward the crowd. "You all mocked a woman who carried lives on her back while burning alive." He raised his voice, not out of anger, but honor. "This woman saved 6 soldiers from that ambush. She deserves a medal, not your laughter." A manager stepped forward, flustered. I had no idea." "Of course you didn't, because she never asked for attention, just a job. And she still showed up, scarred and silent, to serve you all with dignity." Tears welled in Ellie's eyes. "I never wanted thanks. I just wanted to move on." But Ryland shook his head. "No, ma'am, you do not disappear. Not today." He pulled out his phone and made a single call. And within minutes, something unthinkable began to happen. 3 other veterans from his unit began showing up. One walked with crutches, one had lost an eye, and the third, he fell to his knees when he saw Ellie. "You're alive," he whispered. The restaurant was no longer just a place for food. It had become sacred ground, because the woman they laughed at had once shielded them all from death, and tonight the world would finally know it. Ellie stood frozen as 3 more veterans gathered around her, each one carrying the weight of survival in their eyes. Some limped, some trembled, but all of them had one thing in common. They remembered her, and none of them had seen her since the war. The restaurant no longer felt like a battlefield of judgment. Now it was something else, a place where ghosts returned, not to haunt, but to heal. The man who had knelt reached for her hand. "You told me to hold on when the bullets were flying. You were 17, and you carried a grown man to safety." Ellie's lips quivered. "I was 19. He laughed softly through tears. "Could have fooled us. You were braver than any of us." The guests at the nearby tables looked stunned. The businessmen who had laughed earlier stared at their plates, ashamed. Some began to get up quietly and leave. Others stayed, unable to look away. The manager, unsure of what to do, finally said, "Ellie, if you need the rest of the night off." Colonel Ryland interrupted, calm but firm. "She will not be serving another drink in this restaurant again." There was a beat of confusion before he added, "Because she will not be a waitress anymore." He turned to Ellie. "There is something I want you to see." Ellie shook her head. "No, I do not need anything. I am not here for handouts." "I know, but this is not charity. It is recognition." He walked her outside, the other veterans flanking them like an honor guard. Parked at the curb was a black SUV with tinted windows. A woman in a navy blue pantsuit stepped out and smiled gently. "Miss Ellie Thomas?" "Yes?" "I am Commander Reeve, Pentagon Liaison for Medical Veteran Affairs. Colonel Ryland has been searching for you for years. You were never officially debriefed, never honored, but your story did not die in that rubble." Ellie's knees weakened. Ryland steadied her. "You were nominated for a Distinguished Service Cross, but when your name disappeared from the records after your discharge, the paperwork was shelved. Quietly." "I did not want anyone to know," Ellie whispered. "But the people you saved? Never forgot." Commander Reeve handed her a folder. Inside was a photo, her, carrying Ryland across a field, smoke in the distance. And beneath it, official papers. the commendation she was meant to receive years ago. Ryland looked her in the eyes. "You deserve your place in history, Ellie. We are here to make sure you get it." Ellie wiped her tears. "I never wanted attention." "You do not have to speak," said the soldier with the crutch. "Just stand beside us. We will speak for you." That night, the whispers on social media started small. A post from a customer, a blurry photo of the scarred waitress surrounded by uniformed men, a caption that read, "She was mocked for her scars until the men she saved showed up and saluted her." It went viral overnight. But Ellie had no idea yet. She was too busy sitting on a bench outside, hugging the folder against her chest, wondering if maybe, for the first time in years, she no longer had to hide. By morning, the world knew her name. Ellie Thomas, the Forgotten Medic, trended on every platform. News outlets picked up the story, broadcasting grainy footage from the restaurant security camera. Ellie standing among the very soldiers she once saved, now saluting her. It was raw, powerful, unforgettable. But Ellie did not watch the coverage. She was still overwhelmed, half afraid it would all vanish like a dream. For years, she had hidden in kitchens and behind serving trays, her scars the only story people saw. Now, for the first time, her truth was louder than their judgment. The restaurant issued a public apology. The corporate group that mocked her tried to distance themselves. But none of that mattered, because Ellie had something more valuable now. Respect earned in silence, and a community ready to honor her in the open. A week later, she stood at a small stage set up outside a Veterans Memorial Center. She wore a clean, navy blue dress, her burns visible, her hands steady. Colonel Ryland stood beside her. Reporters waited. Veterans in uniform stood in rows, their medals catching the light. The Secretary of the Army stepped forward. "In the chaos of war, some heroes are lost, not in death, but in silence. Today, we break that silence." He handed Ellie a ribboned box. Inside, the Distinguished Service Cross, the second highest military award for valor in the United States. The crowd erupted in applause, but Ellie did not speak right away. Then, quietly, into the microphone, she said, "I was never afraid of dying. I was afraid of being forgotten. I thought these scars were shame, but now I know they are proof that I stayed, that I tried, that I mattered." Her voice cracked, but she went on. "To the young women who feel invisible, to the veterans who came back but never felt home, you are not forgotten. I see you, and I'm not hiding anymore." The audience was silent. Then, one by one, they began to rise. Veterans, nurses, civilians, even strangers in the back. A standing ovation. That night, Ellie was offered a national scholarship to complete her medical training. She accepted, but she did not stop working. She returned to the restaurant, but not as a waitress, as the new director of veteran outreach, creating a program that employed and supported veterans transitioning back to civilian life. The same people who once mocked her now held the door for her, called her ma'am, looked her in the eyes. Not because she demanded respect, but because she had finally been seen. And when people asked her about that tattoo on her wrist, she would smile and say, "It belonged to a team I never stopped fighting for, and they never stopped fighting for me."